Today is April 2nd, Wednesday, and I wanted to kind of highlight something that I believe is going to become critically important to all of us in the future, and I call it the cradle pattern. It basically looks like this purple line over here. It's a breakdown in the market, we pull back and then break down again and then start to pull back, where we could get a higher high here, more commonly a lower high here. And the same thing invertedly rolling through this pattern here. Inverted, you get a big rally, selling off, setting up a low, coming back up, kind of retesting that level, and then coming back down, generally a lower low, sometimes or a higher low, sometimes a lower low. But what ends up happening here is we end up having a series of Fibonacci structures where we have this, range here that also correlates to this range up here and also correlates down to this low down here. So when we get in this mode, we're either going to break out, this way to the upside or to the downside. And if we break out to the downside, we'd have to use, new or recent support levels or Fibonacci levels to figure out where we're at. And if we break out to the upside, then we're coming back up to this level up here, generally, or more. Okay, so the same thing here. Let me get rid of that and come over here. Get rid of KD's posting. And we have the same type of a setup here in red. And it's just basically inverted. So this goes hand in hand with the excess phase peak pattern. And we also have the level down here, wherever we start. Now, I've highlighted a bunch of them here on this chart. Okay, so you need to understand how these all eventually play out. I mean, ultimately, it's going to break from this cradle pattern one way or the other, either down or up. And if we just need to understand that this cradle pattern is setting up, and you can see here, I've highlighted this point right over here. I believe we're getting into a cradle pattern. And I believe the cradle is setting up. And, we have our highs up here. Try to make a line. And we have our high in the range right here. And we have our low in the range right down here. So there you go. There's the cradle pattern setting up. It falls right into the excess phase peak pattern as well. You know how we have the excess phase peak patterns. If you've been following me long enough, we get these big uptrends, and they're even in smaller time frames, setting up this structure, moving into this breakdown structure, into consolidation, then eventually moving into a breakdown low, which I call the ultimate low. Now, given where we're at with this structure, I would say that we're in the consolidation phase, moving into a cradle pattern. Depending on where we top out back over here, which I believe is pretty close to topping right now, I think we're going to end up, like I said, rolling into a breakdown mode, kind of like this, down into this lower channel eventually. And I think that the cradle pattern is playing an important role. We've now essentially completed the cradle pattern. We can get a little higher. So understand that we can get back up into this high or a little higher. But at this point, we're in a Fibonacci 618 to 382 level. And I believe that we're kind of looking at an ending phase here of the cradle pattern. We'll see how it plays out. We could get a little bit more upward movement here, maybe up to 565, 566 on the SPY. But I believe that ultimately the combination of these cradle patterns, and like I said, you can see how I've highlighted them. We get in, I'll come over here with a brush and highlight. We get into this area, we get a pretty solid breakdown. We get into this area, we get a break up. we get into this area, we get volatility around the election, break down, then gap up. So this is basically a volatility kind of a mode. We come up here, we get the same structure, we break down, and look, we break down below the low here. That's kind of critical. If we don't get back below that low, then we're going to fall back into bullish trending. So see how we didn't get below this low here? Off of this rotation downward here, that means we're going to rotate back up. So same kind of thing here. Came down here, we broke down below the lows, so we got to look at the previous lows back over here. This would be our next previous low. And because we didn't get below that low, we came back up, we stalled, we broke above the high, failed, rejected, came down below this low, and rolled down. So it all plays into Fibonacci. But at this point, if we were to get a rally phase out of this, which I think is highly unlikely, we would have to get all the way back up here to this 611 area. And meaning that, if we get any type of a move, it's going to have to be a big move. There is nothing right now suggesting that this move, this rally phase, has got the capability of doing anything but getting potentially up to here, 574. In reality, I think this 565 area is really more of our topping area. And I think this is going to be really kind of a critical top in the markets if we get up to that level, roughly right in that level, because I think this cradle pattern is playing out very cleanly right now. And I think this move back up is really very close to an end. I would suggest that we're moving into an end phase topping pattern right over in this area right now, looking for a broader rollover towards April 15, 14, 15, 16, which is where my next bottoming pattern sets up. So again, playing this cradle pattern, I think we get a lower low or lower high, just as I've marked here, and then start to break down into this pattern here, looking for a low down below 540, somewhere down in this area. $535 to 540, and I believe this entire pullback here is nothing but the end of the cradle pattern. Remember, cradle pattern typically is like this, and then we get either a breakout or a breakdown. So I'm thinking we're breaking down like this. Given my analysis, given my research, the cradle pattern is setting up very cleanly right here, and I would not be surprised to see a big breakdown over the next 2, 3, 4 days, moving down into this area, given what I believe is the cradle pattern setup and the excess phase peak setup. Ultimately, this next breakdown could be the start of a move down to the ultimate low. And again, the ultimate low could be pushing all the way down into this 505, 500 area. So we could be moving, I'll try to highlight it. We could be moving down through, I'll do it a little different, series of lows rolling into that 505, 500 level in June, July, which would mean that I would have to go here, 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 and then really over here in July, setting that low, potentially down in that 500 area right here. So again, pay attention to what's going on here. This could be nothing more than a little pullback rally in a broader down phase. And remember, what I'm trying to highlight today is what I'm calling the cradle pattern, which I believe, these are great examples of it, but you can see them everywhere. And it comes down to the point that, if we're going to get a breakout, it's going to come with moderate strength throughout this trend, breaking above this level and trying to rally back up on out. given where we're at and the dominant downward cycle trend right now, even with this volume trying to see the markets rally here, the breakdown move is still probably 60, 70, maybe even 80% probability given this breakdown, given this excess phase peak pattern, which I've drawn here in blue. We're rolling into the cradle pattern within the consolidation phase, and the next move is a pretty solid breakdown, in my opinion. So be aware that you might want to watch for these cradle patterns. They appear everywhere, just like the excess phase peak pattern, and it's very likely that these are going to play a role in your trading decisions in the near future. Okay, guys, talk to you later.